if anything, for Mr. Ruto, his country now has a non-NATO ally status. So he might get some, anytime there's a spending bill, he might get some money thrown his way.
Europeans don't throw money for free. And one of the demands already that the young people are protesting is that he's mortgaged the country to the West and to the World Bank. I don't think this is a time, faced with this formidable type of protest, that he's going to be publicizing any efforts. If he has his, it's going to be done at night and quietly. Any efforts to ask these countries to bail him out, So he's between a rock and a hard place, as they say. But in reality, as I said in the beginning, it's not Ruto. You could put any other president, any other person. It could be Odinga, if he had been declared as the winner of the election and he's the president. It could be any other major Kenyan politician. Structurally, our economies are the same. If we want to start developing a better understanding on the crises, let's resist the temptation to particularize it as individual issues or even particularize it to particular countries. You should ask yourself, why do all these African countries have similar problems? It cannot be that all the leaders are similarly incompetent. You see? They can't be that consistent, right? Think about it. Randomly, just all of them happen to be uniformly incompetent? Or do they face uniform set of factors that result in the type of crisis? And to benefit and educate our viewers, answer is yes. They face uniform types of challenges. They are not allowed to industrialize. They're not allowed to produce the smartphones that almost every African now has. They're not allowed to produce those computers. They're not allowed to produce those automobiles that you see in the streets of Africa, the jet planes that African airlines have. They just don't produce. They're only permitted to produce so-called raw materials, including the ones I mentioned earlier. And then minerals, copper, cobalt, coltan, manganese, uranium, you need it, you name it. They're not allowed to use those mineral resources to put it through factories and produce products. They sell it, these huge ships just take it raw to Europe, to the United States, and increasingly, of course, to China and other Asian countries. So at the end of the day, they need to borrow money to buy manufacturers, including even medicine, right? Because they are not they didn't even put enough energy into saying, we have all these plants that many of these corporations, the ones even that produce pharmaceuticals, they get the components, the raw material, the ingredients, the plants from African countries.
Yep.
So should we not be leading the world in those type of production? Even that we don't have. Instead, we still import medicine from outside. So we're in a serious crisis, really. And it's not a Ruto crisis or Odinga crisis. But what happens is, faced with this type of crisis, to what extent do the individual African rulers resort to brutality to crush opposition, to crush the demands? And that is how you can start to differentiate each of the African leaders. You had Mwalimu Julius Nyerere in Tanzania, this intellectual poet, statesman, a teacher who understood society and faced the similar challenges. He was not going to go and become a crazy tyrant like the one we have in Uganda. At one point, he realized that he had pushed as far as he could. He stepped down from power. As a result, Tanzania has had some peaceful transitions of governments now. And then, of course, you have Ruto, And Ruto has had many of his own issues in the past. But as the Kenyan economy has become more evolved and sophisticated, you were in the White House the other day, so it's very difficult to see Ruto issuing an order and saying, even if it takes killing 100 or 200 Kenyans, I want you to suppress this uprising. No, nobody's going to threaten my presidency. Museveni in Uganda can still do that, and he might, but not Ruto, because the Kenyan economy is sophisticated and is a very critical component of the Western system. You have all those multinationals in Nairobi. They won't allow. If there's a choice between stability and Ruto, Ruto is going to be out the door.